We on Fire Sports Podcast, The Spot, season number 4, episode number 50. Yeah, man, it's a 50-piece this season, man. First and foremost, man, if it's your first time listening, I appreciate your ear. We on Fire Sports Podcast, The Spot. We provide hot fire takes and analysis across the sporting landscape. And if you're OG of the show, man, I appreciate the check-in, man. I appreciate all the love and the feedback. I appreciate your ear. And yeah, man, we on one, man. It's the 50th episode of season number 4. Man, this thing is rolling on along, man. We've been on one. Hope you guys have had a great productive week as we transition into the weekend. And first, I will say this as well, man. Shout out to all the moms out there, man. All the moms, the hardworking moms, the single moms, the moms that's holding down the family sector. You know, the moms that, made you that good food and, nursed you back to health when you was a sick little kid out here. Definitely shout out to the moms, man. Even if your mom is no longer with you anymore, definitely live on her memory and celebrate the moms this weekend. That's first and foremost. And this Mother's Day weekend, man, is going to be epic based on the fact that we've got a lot going on across the sporting landscape. First and foremost, man, we got the NBA playoffs jumping off, and it's in full swing in the second round, and there's been some situations going on in the playoffs, to say the least. We got two teams in particular that, I thought easily was going to two-step their way to the Eastern Conference Finals and face off against each other in the playoffs. Both these teams have won 60 games in the regular season, and both these teams are on the ropes. Both these teams are in trouble. And yeah, I'm talking about the Boston Celtics as well as the Cleveland Cavaliers. And we're going to definitely get into that. Also, the National Football League, man, is out here trying to snatch all the media like they can get during the NBA playoffs and the NHL playoffs and the baseball season cracking, as George Pickens was traded from the Pittsburgh Steelers to the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys pick up another receiver to play opposite CeeDee Lamb. And the Pittsburgh Steelers, man, to me is still mind-boggling. Because this is an organization that still doesn't have a starting quarterback. This is an organization that traded for DK Metcalf from the Seattle Seahawks, giving up a second-round pick and also breaking my man DK off with a big bag of money. So I'm not sure what the direction that the Pittsburgh Steelers is going to. Now, I do know this, is that they definitely didn't want to pay George Pickens. And I'm not one to knock, somebody paper out here. But we can see that George Pickens wasn't going to get a long-term deal with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And so to me, I just thought that it might have been in the best interest of the Steelers to maybe try to move that trade more closer to the NFL draft. But, they did it anyway, man. So we'll get into that just a little bit. Also, as I mentioned, man, we got baseball jumping off, man. I'm excited. Because my Cubs, man, we dropped, a nice little series to the San Francisco Giants, man, but we still in first place. There's a lot of teams out here, man, and a lot of divisions, across baseball, especially that NL West that is cracking right now. Not sure about what I consider the overrated AL East is, that division is not really a strong division, man, with the Yankees. They just basically, in first place by default. And so, it's an exciting time of the year for baseball, man. And I'm actually gearing up to go to a couple of Major League parks, man. Get out there, man. Enjoy some of the festivities of Major League Baseball, man. I know all of y'all are not baseball heads like myself, but I definitely get it in on the baseball tip, man. So it's about that time, man, to get out to some of these ballparks. But it's also, too, about that time, man, to get into another epic meltdown from the Boston Celtics. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. The Boston Celtics, I haven't seen a team drop 20-point leads 2 games in a row on their home court. I've been watching the NBA a long time. And I haven't seen just any regular NBA team that hadn't won an NBA championship last season drop a 20-point lead 2 consecutive games at home. And it was funny because I was watching the game and I kind of saw the tea leaves. Boston went up, pretty much in the second half, up that hot dub, and they was living the high life. But I just knew, I'm like, man, it's going to come down to the Knicks. Long as the Knicks play smart basketball, don't turn the ball over, don't go out there themselves and shoot a million threes, they going to inch themselves back into this basketball game. And that's exactly what happened. And shout out to Tom Thibodeau. I thought that he was very smart with taking Jalen Brunson off the floor at the beginning of the fourth quarter and letting some of the other guys cook. McBride came in the game. He was cooking a little bit. I just think that just with the lineups that he had out there, he kind of just let guys just do their thing. And Mikal Bridges was on one. This guy, man, was on one. And to me, I just think that the whole comeback by the Knicks kind of overshadowed what Mikal Bridges was able to do. I mean, this was one of the best playoff performances from a Knick I've probably seen in a very long time. From the standpoint of just being that offensive guy who he was struggling coming into the fourth quarter of this game. He was in single digits, and he got hot as a firecracker in the fourth quarter on both sides of the ball, on the offensive end and on the defensive end. So shout out to him and Tom Thibodeau. We're kind of shaking up the lineup just a little bit. Karl-Anthony Towns. And I'm very critical of Karl-Anthony Towns. Those who are OGs of the show know how I get down about Karl-Anthony Towns. I think he's a glorified jump shooter. But for him to take one 3-point attempt in the game, Elizabeth, I'm coming to join you. I never thought I would see that out of him. And so even though he was on the milk carton in the second half, in the first half, he played just a bit more like a traditional big man and getting himself in the post, using the mid post, and getting into his bag, man. And I thought that he kind of set the table for the Knicks. And Jalen Brunson, he didn't have his best of games. This is probably Jalen Brunson's worst game he's had in the playoffs so far from a statistical standpoint. And this was a team win by the Knicks. That's what made it more impressive. It was a team win. It was like I said, in the fourth quarter, there's a lot of teams that's down by 15, 16 points. And then they start trying to hit home runs every time and chuck up a million threes. But I like what I saw from the Knicks being able to just take what the defense was giving them. Mikal Bridges worked from himself from the mid-range and then took himself outside and hit a couple threes in that stretch. And for a guy to end up, say, with 14 points in the game, it seemed like he had more points than that, just simply based on that barrage that he had, man, in the fourth quarter. So the Knicks, they living a high life right now. And this was a series that I easily thought that this series was going 5 or 6 games in Boston's way. But Boston has lost their swag big time. And they on the ropes. They on the ropes like, Deontay Wilder versus Tyson Fury type of on the ropes. And so they still got that big right hand. This is a team that is still capable. But boy, they on thin ice. And I haven't had to snap off in a long time, man, on We on Fire Sports Podcast, the spot. But Joe Mazzulla. Bro, what the hell are you doing, fam? Like, the game before, in game number 1, this team took 19 consecutive, 18 out of 19 or 19 out of 23 point shots. And it's just like, we all know the swag with Boston, man. They shoot a lot of threes. But when are we going to get back to what I consider situational basketball, dude? I mean, at the end of the day, everybody was broke. They weren't running no offense. It looked like a straight open gym or a rec league game. And this is a team that has not only won an NBA championship last season, but this is a team that has went to multiple Eastern Conference finals. When Brad Stevens was a coach, up to Ime Udoka for his short stint, up to Joe Mazzulla. And I thought it was one of the most dumbest coaching jobs that this guy has done over the last 2 games for the Boston Celtics. And to me, it's a very important point in that is that I don't think this guy can, quote unquote, crack the whip. I think this guy's just too buddy-buddy with these guys. Now, oddly enough, to me, I think the Celtics respect him in a certain kind of way. But I think that respect is more so what I consider new age coaching, meaning that you really kind of, the guy's friend and buddy just a little bit, and you bring a little bit to the table. But at the end of the day, man, when you see the L being let out of the balloon, it's time to get grimy out here, man, and give your team a wake-up call. And I think that these situations with the Boston Celtics could have been avoided in both games if he would have just called the timeout, man, and set guys down and just got the whole situation together. Especially, too, in game number 2 when I see Porzingis, who gave you a nice little punch, and we all know he's been a little sick a little bit, but he gave you a scoring punch in that game, and they're a different ball club when Porzingis is not out there on the floor with them. And we saw this in the fourth quarter of this game, where Porzingis really didn't play much at all in the fourth quarter, and the Knicks just kept chipping away. And so now, this series swings back to Madison Square Garden for game number 3 and game number 4. You know New York City going to be lit. You know they're going to be on one. You know the celebrities going to be out there. And this is probably the most exciting crowd we're probably going to see from the New York Knicks fan base, man, in a very long time. And so I'm not, kicking or putting dirt on the Boston Celtics just yet, because they're a team that, they're defending the world champions. But they put themselves in a big-time corner, man, and they need kind of a shake-up of reality, or this team could be out of the NBA playoffs as early as the second round, man. So I just couldn't believe what I saw. It's definitely something that, new age coaching. Guys shooting 1 million threes. I'm just going to sit back and not say nothing at all. And now you're in a 2-0 hole, and we'll see, what the Boston Celtics do moving forward. But coming up, we're going to get into the rest of the playoff slate, as obviously we got that Denver series, man, with OKC. It's Denver. This series is tied now. Denver took game number 1. OKC just came out, and this game was over probably in the first 10 minutes in game number 2. So we'll see what it do, man. We definitely going to get into our thoughts about that series as well, man, as that's jumping off. Also, too, obviously, we're going to get into, the game, last night, the Golden State Warriors versus the Minnesota Timberwolves. We're definitely going to break that boy down as well. As, like I said, man, coming up this weekend, we got a few bangers on the NBA tip, coming up this weekend, as well as the Cavaliers is another team that's on the ropes as well. I'm going to get into that in the Pacers series coming up in a few. But first and foremost, man, I appreciate all the love and the feedback. I appreciate your ear. We on Fire Sports Podcast. The Spot. Welcome back. And man, we're going to jump right back into these NBA playoffs as we in the second round, man. There's been a lot of things unexpected in these NBA playoffs. There's been a lot of predictions that have went awry, especially on my end, man. And one thing about it, man, we keep it 100 on We on Fire Sports Podcast, The Spot. Man, if I was wrong about my prediction on the playoff series, man, first and foremost, I'm probably with a big group of another cats who get out, man, with the breakdown of the analysis, especially with that Boston and New York series. And, not to just be, self-serving on the New York Knicks, but I just thought that the Boston Celtics had their number all season long, and the playoffs has been a different story. So we've seen a bunch of that, man, in these NBA playoffs so far, and that's what makes it exciting. It's not really about, what you see on paper as far as the matchups is concerned. It's about getting money time, man. And some teams, they just go out there and they just, take that loose change, scoop up that loose change. And so, but another series that, is interesting to me, man, in the Western Conference, a series that, to me, is getting a little play, but it's not been as banging as the rest of the series that we've had in the second round. And that's that Denver Nuggets Oklahoma City series. As presently right now, man, we one game apiece in that series. As game 3 will be later on tonight, up at 52-80, young Denver. And game 2, was won by the Oklahoma City Thunder. They got punched in the mouth in game number 1 by the Denver Nuggets. And game number 2, to me, all the pressure was on the Oklahoma City Thunder. Obviously, you don't want to be in a situation where you lose 2 consecutive games at home. We've seen this across the playoffs, man. And we went through a stretch which I had never seen before in the beginning of the second round, where the road team won every single game kicking off the second round. And so this series, Oklahoma City was able to come back and bounce back in game number 2, almost putting up the buck 50. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander having 34 points in that game and 8 assists. And this is the battle of the MVPs. Last year, Nikola Jokic won the MVP award, rightfully so. A lot of people thought that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who finished second in the award last year, should have won it. And, it was really a pick 'em, to be quite honest with you. I think it was one of the most closest MVP races we've seen in the NBA in a long time. And this year, we back at it again. Same mode. I just think that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, he's in pole position to win that award this season. I mean, you never know, but I expect, him to get that prestigious MVP award in the upcoming weeks. And so this is a series with the two reigning MVPs pretty much going at it. And both these players, especially with Jokic, man, in game one with the 40. I mean, this guy's just outstanding, man. Just the 40-20 game again. I mean, how many times we going to see this from this guy? To me, he's the best player in the NBA. But last game, man, this team giving up 80-plus points in the first half. The Denver Nuggets, this game was over with at halftime. I just like just the oomph that Oklahoma City came out and played in game two. I mean, they knew what time it was. The pressure was all on them, and they hit the court running. And, game number two really was over with, as I mentioned, in the first half. And so game number three, the series don't really start, man, until you change locales. And to me, the pressure really is on the Denver Nuggets in game number three. Simply based on the fact is that a lot of people have been questioning Oklahoma City with their youth. And, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, is he going to have another running mate with him? And that is a legitimate question mark. I mean, this is a team that won 68 games this season. 68 games. There's only been a handful of teams across the history of the NBA that has won that many games in the regular season. I mean, they was 2 games shy away from winning the 70-piece. And to me, it's really about Jalen Williams. And I'm talking about the starter from Santa Clara, Jalen Williams, because they got 2 of them. Now, to me, he's really got to be that guy in this series because Murray is starting to heaten up a little bit. And definitely Michael Porter Jr. I think that he's right for a good game. Aaron Gordon has been pretty much clutch through the whole, playoff run, say for them. And we've seen, Denver dip into their bench a little bit, and they've been getting some good play, some steady play from, Braun's been playing pretty decent for them. So, to me, it's really about the others for the Thunder. More notably, Chet Holmgren. I think he's got to be that guy. He's got to give the Oklahoma City Thunder a 20-piece. Jalen Williams to me as well, because I think it's going to be a balanced attack to be able to take out the Denver Nuggets. But to me, the pressure again is on Oklahoma City. Because Denver, this is a veteran ball club. This is a ball club that won the NBA championship, less than 2 years ago. Obviously they moved on from Mike Malone, which has been a big time deal. And, I had confidence in this team going through the final, week or so of the regular season. But once they moved on from Mike Malone, man, I kind of, scaled back just a little bit because I didn't know what I was going to see. And, Adamant has done a good job for this team. Nikola Jokic, he's been very, very vocal on the sideline for this ball club. And so they know how big these games are. In Oklahoma City, to me, this is their first legitimate test. Meaning that they need to go into Denver and try to take home court advantage in the first game. Because if Denver go up 2-1 in this series, the pressure scales tremendously on Oklahoma City. Meaning that they down 2-1. You got another game in Denver before it transitions back to Oklahoma City. And we've never seen this team in this position before. I think it's going to be an exciting game. I think it's probably going to be one of the best well-played playoff games we've seen so far this season. And so we'll see what it do, man. But, definitely for me, this is a game that, as an NBA fan, this is what you look for. Just which team can kind of move the pendulum a little bit and get kind of that mental advantage, especially with Denver being at home for 2 consecutive games. It's up for them, man. If they're able to hold down home court, they can legitimately go up 3-1 in this series. So we'll see what that thing do, man, later on this evening. I'm definitely going to be sitting back and checking that jump off a little bit later on. But I want to get into another series, man. And, I can't forget about this series. And it's the Cleveland Cavaliers, man. The Cleveland Cavaliers, another team that won 60-plus games this season. This was a team that I thought that them and the Boston Celtics was going to be on a highway straight to get to the Eastern Conference Finals. And everybody thought that. I'm not the only dude that thought that. Everybody thought that. And both of these teams are down 2-0. I think the Cleveland Cavaliers, man, they in some deep doo-doo right now. They slide down a razor blade into an alcohol river. Not only are they down 2-0 and lost 2 games at home, but they got some injuries, man. And one of those injuries is Darius Garland. Word on the street is Darius Garland will suit up in a few, less than an hour or so tonight. So that's a huge situation because they got to do something about Tyrese Halliburton. it just seems like his confidence is growing game by game with this guy. And there's a lot of people that was critical of his play. Me being one of them, I wasn't going to go as far as saying that this guy was overrated, but he really didn't have a good regular season. He just kind of rode the wave a little bit during the regular season. But, ever since, that whole situation with them, DDT and the Milwaukee Bucks and sending them home, his confidence has grown tremendously. And this is a team that, everybody plays well on that ball club, whether it's Pascal Siakam, whether it's, just my man Nembhard playing well, playing, gritty basketball, man. Benedict Mathurin playing good basketball for this club. And so, you can't forget about Miles Turner as well. He's been playing, decent so far, during the playoffs. And this team, they smell blood. In Cleveland, they're in a situation where they missed Evan Mobley. We saw that big time, especially towards the end of game number 2, where this team just let go the rope. And to me, it was just the mental mistakes by Kenny Atkinson. This team just could not inbound the ball at the end of game number 2. And part of it for me is that he didn't have enough guards out there on the floor. Where was Ty Jerome at? This guy's been playing outstanding since Darius Garland has been out. But, I looking at the game, when we get deep into the fourth quarter, he's not out there on the floor. And really, my man Mitchell, Spider Donovan Mitchell, he was really the only guard out there with ball handling skills to be able to, inbound the ball or be able to potentially get out of a trap. And the Cleveland Cavaliers paid for it big time. And so for me, they definitely under the 8 ball. This obviously is a must-win game for them. You go down 3-0 in the NBA, man, it's over. So, they got a raucous crowd that they got to contend with, man, up there in Indianapolis. There's always, a good, basketball culture, man, in the state of Indiana as a whole. And those fans are going to be out, man, smelling blood. To me, it's really about Darius Garland. He's out with the toe injury. If he's able to bounce back. I'm not sure quite about Evan Mobley, man. He may be a game-time decision. They definitely need him because even with Darius Garland being back, without Evan Mobley in the fold, they don't get out of this series. And it could be, it's getting very, very late early for the Cleveland Cavaliers, man. So we'll definitely, see what they do moving forward. But, these 2 games tonight, especially from the Cleveland perspective, they got all the pressure on them. Because, again, you go down 3-0, man, it's a wrap. And Donovan Mitchell, I took my cap to him. Last game, 48 points. We seen this from Donovan Mitchell time and time over again. And it just seems like whenever he snap off, man, for those big games, this team just always come up short, going all the way back to the Utah Jazz days. And I can't blame him for it. I think that Kenny Atkinson, just won the Coach of the Year. I think he was deserving, of that. But he didn't do a good coaching job. And that, to me, has been kind of like the silver lining in what we've seen in the last, 2 or 3 days in the NBA playoffs. Is coaching, man, is the fine line between a team winning and a team losing. Obviously, it's all about talent as well. But either team that you face up with, they're in a situation where they're trying to get rid of you, man. They're trying to move on and survive in the NBA playoffs and get to the next round. So those subtle coaching moves, man, has been paramount so far in these NBA playoffs. So we'll definitely see what it do moving forward for the Cavaliers as well as the Thunder and the Nuggets coming up as well later on tonight. Next up, I'm going to get into the Golden State Warriors. Golden State Warriors, and they tied currently right now with the Minnesota Timberwolves. Steph Curry, being nicked up, one of the biggest injuries, probably the biggest injury of the whole playoffs, because it looks like he's going to be out a week or so. And this series might be at dire straits by the time he gets back. So, I get into that whole series and the antics again from Draymond Green once again for the Golden State Warriors. First and foremost, man, I appreciate all the love and the feedback. I appreciate you. Yeah. We on Fire Sports Podcast. The spot. All right, before we wrap this thing up, before we wrap it up, Man, hope you guys, man, spend some time, man, some quality time, man, and show some love and affection to the moms out there, man. This is Mother's Day weekend. And obviously, if your mom is no longer with you, man, just sit back and enjoy all the great memories and all the great lessons that your mom taught you over the years, man, to help you, move on in this game called life. So, we gonna get back into the NBA playoffs, man. But before I do, don't forget to check your boy out, man, on Facebook. We on Fire Sports Podcast. Also, too, you can check us out on YouTube at We on Fire Sports Podcast. Also, too, on Twitter at We on Fire Sports. We also out there, man, on Podbean, and also, too, where all podcasts can be listened to. And with that being said, man, let's get into these Golden State Warriors and Minnesota Timberwolves, man. It's Golden State, they was able to come out and win game number 1 in this series. And I thought that the Minnesota Timberwolves, they came out flat in game 1. You could just tell that we saw this last year. They went through the playoffs and got to the Western Conference Finals, man, is that when they got to the Western Conference Finals, they just straight ran out of gas against Dallas. It just seemed like the air was let out of their balloon. But in game number 1, Golden State and just the veterans that they have, they knew that game number 1 was important for them to be able to hold it down. And as we got late into game number 1, then we had Steph Curry, man, suffered a hamstring injury, which, was huge. When I seen him pull up, man, I knew what time it was. And this is a major injury to the Golden State Warriors for obvious reasons, not only for Steph, but just the Warriors as a whole. Because to me, Steph is probably the most run-around player, just as far as miles tracked on the court, man, when he's out there on the floor of any player in the NBA, just running off screens and guys chasing him around. And so this hamstring injury is huge, especially, too, at the age Steph Curry is, man. This guy's not 25 years old anymore, even though he's playing great like he is 25. When you get a little older, man, it's a little bit harder, man, to recover back from injuries. And the Golden State Warriors, I mean, they got a good training staff. I know they're going to be, all set, ready to go, try to get him back on the court as quickly as possible. His word on the street is, man, he's going to be out for about a week, which should probably be the equivalent of 2 to 3 playoff games just in regards. And, I'm hearing a lot of talk about, man, Steph come back, if they down 3-2, man, when Steph come back, they still have a chance. First and foremost, I don't know if it's going to be 3-2 when he come back. And secondly, we don't know if he's going to be the optimal Stephen Curry when he comes back. And so this is a huge deal for the Golden State Warriors. I feel bad just from a standpoint is that you always want to have the best players out there, man, playing and giving their best effort. That just makes the whole playoff experience just exciting across the board. I think Minnesota, they wised up in game number 2. They was able to bounce back, and kind of, handle that loose change, last night just in the game. And I thought it was important for them, winning 117-93. Julius Randle, man, this guy's been playing some good ball for the Minnesota Timberwolves. I mean, we saw that in the Lakers series where he was just coming downhill on big bull mode. And, he's really the needle mover for the Minnesota Timberwolves because what we saw over the playoffs just as a whole is that teams fall in love with the trade piece, with the three-point shot. And when you got a guy, man, that's going downhill like that, drawing contact, hitting those close shots, also to getting to the free throw line, you just kind of set the tone. Another major injury, a major injury that we saw was Anthony Edwards, with the ankle injury. And so, to me, then that's a big injury as well. We seen him tweak it a little bit in the Lakers series, falling down, next to LeBron James. And, that was an ordeal in itself. But one thing about Anthony Edwards, man, is that he's tough. He's a tough character, a tough cat. He's a young dude, so I think that he'll be able to kind of bounce back, say, from that. And I just think that the Minnesota Timberwolves are just more equipped to be able to handle an injury to Anthony Edwards, especially with Steph Curry being out, for them to be able to kind of move on. But this is going to be a much-watched series, obviously, kicking back off, man, over the weekend, man, as these two teams, they lock horns on Saturday night, man, on ABC. Also, we got the Knicks and the Celtics jumping off as well tomorrow, just in regards. But there was something that we saw, man, in game number 2 in this series. And we saw Draymond Green spaz out again. I mean, this guy can't help himself, man. Draymond Green can't help himself. And to me, if you're a fan and an OG of the show, it's definitely something I've been critical about Draymond Green over the years. Because at some point, dude, it just becomes, just a dog and pony show. And, I heard his comments after the game in the presser, talking about, he's not the angry black man and all of that. And, he's getting a lot of, kick back, say, from that. Speaking as a black man, I'm gonna just keep it 100, Draymond Green, is that your actions, man, you can't change the narrative based on your actions. So if I just showed somebody just clips of you and just how you was acting not only last night, but leading the NBA playoffs and technicals, and you basically a technical away from being suspended a game. If I just brought somebody to watch the game and who didn't have no idea who you was, they'll think your ass half damn crazy. And so to me, it's a situation where they can't afford to have this guy be suspended for a game in this series, because it's over. Draymond Green gets suspended in this series. This series is over with and done. And the season is a wrap. And so he's got to be able to control it. I mean, it seemed like this is a narrative over and over and over again. This guy's not going to change. Obviously he went through the whole counseling situation with Nurkic and getting suspended and all that. Man, this dude don't give a damn. And he feels like that's the necessary fire that he has to bring, and that's all cool. But I've seen NBA players in the past that brought that umph and that fire. One of them, most notably Dennis Rodman. But the Pistons, just that run, and even with the Chicago Bulls, it came to a point to where, okay, Dennis, calm down, man, play some ball. And to be honest with you, that's what Dennis did. He calmed down most of the time once he got kind of checked a little bit by his teammates, and he was out there and put in the work out there. But Draymond Green, it just seemed like over and over again, man. And it's always the world against you, or it's their fault. And at the end of the day, man, the referee could have easily kicked you out of the game, dude, just by you just not going to the bench, not going to the side and cooling down a little bit. So we seen this time and time over again, man. And so we'll see what the Golden State Warriors do moving forward. They're in a tough situation. I predicted before the beginning of this series, I thought the Minnesota Timberwolves would win this series in a 7-game series. I just think that, and there's no disrespect to the Golden State Warriors, I think the Minnesota Timberwolves are a younger team, and I think they are a better team. And we can't forget about Jimmy Butler. And Jimmy Butler, playoff Jimmy, this is the time where you got to show your worth at this point. Meaning that we need one of them 30, 40 pieces out of you while Steph Curry is out. Because if that don't happen, man, it's not looking real good for the Golden State Warriors to potentially even win another game in this series if he don't step up his offensive output like that. And so he can't afford, he had 17 points and 7 rebounds in the last game. And that's just not enough. It's simply not enough. So we'll see what the Golden State Warriors do moving forward, say on that tip. But, man, I ain't going to hold you, man. We're going to get out of here, man. As I mentioned, we got Mother's Day weekend jumping off. Hope you guys sit back and get a chance to relax and so forth. All the ladies out there, man, know you guys, are like Superman and Superwoman combined out here, man, holding the household down, especially to the single moms, holding it down just on that end, man. So salute to all the mothers out there, all love. Shout out to, my family, my mom and so forth, man. So really appreciate all what you've done and all the mothers and all the mentors that I've had, on the female end over the years, holding the deck down. Salute to you this weekend. And, man, I'll be back at the top of the week. And if it's your first time listening, man, I appreciate you checking your boy out. We on Fire Sports Podcast, The Spot. We provide hot fire takes and analysis across the sporting landscape. So we'll be back at the top of the week. Once again, I appreciate all the love and the feedback. I appreciate your ear. We on Fire Sports Podcast, The Spot.